Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Decision Hour. I am your host, Adam Bird. Thank you. Hold your applause. Listen, got another great interview lined up for you today. This one's a special one for me. Special? How? That's a loaded question, really, now that I think about it. Now, your guest today, she's a singer-songwriter, and it's somebody whom I have the honor of calling a friend for the last 20-plus years. Yeah, think about that for a second, right? Singer, songwriter, and we were in the military together, so she is a veteran. So listen, without further ado, I'm going to bring on my friend Hannah Pralle. Hannah, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on. Big fan.
Absolutely. Literally not even 50 seconds into the show. Here we go.
I mean, you have the best guests, you know?
You guys are in for a real treat today. This is awesome, and this has been a long time coming. Seriously, because I've been a fan of Hannah's for a long time. But before I go into the history of it or whatnot, let's have you tell our guests who you are, where you're from, what you're about, a little bit about yourself. Go.
All right. So just to frame it all, I think that maybe one of the most memorable things somebody said to me one time was, "You're the most talented, not famous person I know." And I was like, thanks. I feel like I'm just kind of working all the time. Yeah. But anyway, so my name is Hannah. I grew up mostly on the Navajo Reservation in Chinle, Arizona. My dad was a teacher there. After he was a veteran himself in the Army and was in the oil field in my younger years. So we moved around a whole lot and had a very dirtbag, mercenary, blue-collar kind of life. And then we ended up on the Navajo Reservation, which was just great. When I was 10, graduated from high school there. I was always interested in truck driving, so I joined the Army National Guard in the motor transport unit. That's where I met you. Mm-hmm. 25 years ago, 23 years ago, something like that.
It was a long time ago.
And Bird was my co-driver. I was the driver, but Bird was the co-driver. Just kidding.
She's not lying. There's so much truth to that. Oh my God, do we have stories? Probably for another show. You might get one or two this one. Who knows?
Yeah, notably, I think the most memorable time was we spent 27 hours in a truck together because of operational problems. And we were both like, this is at some point I'm gonna have to shit, you know?
So how does this work really?
There are no trees out here.
There's nothing out there.
Yeah. So that was a memorable experience with Bird. Anyway, but yeah, I wasn't quite satisfied with the trucking that I got to do in the Army Guard, and so I went ahead and I got my CDL when I was 22 and did some over the road trucking. And I've been in and out of commercial driving ever since, and commercial driving education. And but I also my dad was a composer, and so I grew up with a house full of his music. He was on piano. Yeah. And like I said, he was a veteran. He did oil field. You know, we were a very blue collar kind of family, but I think that it was just natural to me that self-expression is just a part of our life, right, you know, that was just very accepted in my family, which now I see that tends to be a little bit polarized, you know. I'd like to get into that a little bit more later in terms of culturally and stuff. Right. But anyway, so I'm very grateful for my family. I'm very grateful for my parents who kind of showed me that work ethic, but also that, sort of impetus towards self-expression. And had a lot of music in the house growing up. And so, I became interested in songwriting and just writing generally. Right. Poetry and just all kinds of things really, really, really young. And I just kind of started messing around with it. I don't even remember a time that I wasn't messing around with something like that, you know? And so I got an education. I went to NAU in Flagstaff. I got a bachelor's in music performance. I got a master's in creative writing, actually creative nonfiction. But the funny thing is I kind of ended up always using my commercial driver's license and my experience in trucking to sort of leverage more and more high paying and like mercenary sort of like trucking work in order to fund my creative projects.
Right.
And so like production is really expensive on music, and I have a really good team. And I've used my CDL to pretty much pay for all of that, you know? And so once I sort of figured out how to put those things together,
right.
then I started to really enjoy life, you know, and I felt like I enjoyed like both aspects. And so that's kind of continued. I've had some interesting plot twists in the last couple of years, but right now, out of nowhere, I live in Hawaii, which I'd never even been to Hawaii before 2020. So I live here with my little dog and my dad and brother. And it is way more gorgeous than you even think.
Right.
It's like mind-numbingly gorgeous. So yeah, I think that's probably a good enough synopsis to start off with.
I think so. And so, all right. So now I'm gonna jump in for a second. So she mentioned that I was her A driver and whatnot. And we met, I believe it was fall of '98 is when I came to Flagstaff the first time and joined the unit, the transportation unit up there. Mm-hmm. And shortly after Hannah and I became friends. I was her A driver a couple of times, and the trip that she's talking, we took this long trip to. Oh, I just lost it.
National Training Center.
Thank you, NTC Fort Irwin, which is like, you know, picture hell on Earth, and that's kind of like, but it's like in the middle of nowhere. Like I'm pretty sure when we were driving out there, like there was a leprechaun that ran across the desert floor. Like it just seemed like it was just going.
We had to do all that training with the night vision goggles, and I literally saw a leprechaun because it wears out your eyes.
Right.
I saw crazy stuff. But it was literally 130 degrees during the daytime. We had no AC in the trucks or the tents or anything.
Nothing.
And it was in the 50s at night. There was like an 80-degree.
Yeah. You're like hot as balls during the day, and then at night you're like freezing, and we're just like, how long are we gonna be here again? 30, I know, and then like the whole month. This blows.
I think they had some kind of disagreement with the local contractors that provided the shitters, and so remember when we're rolling out for that really long like convoy, they had like chains around all our bodies, and we were all just like, "Oh, great, okay." Been eating MREs, so that helps, but. Dude,
there was nowhere to go to we're in the desert. Like nothing. When I say nothing, I want you to like walk outside and just look out your window or walk outside and just picture nothing there and times that by 10. And that's exactly what we saw. Absolutely nothing. And then you're just like, I gotta take a dump. Like really? Like sit between the tires. Like what are you gonna do? Like we couldn't figure. Like don't look. Well, nobody wants to look. It was just.
Nobody wants.
It was so bad. It was so bad. Oh my god. Oh.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but when I first got into the creative writing program in NAU, so this is a master's program. So I was with all these like mega nerds that already had studied creative writing and English and stuff in their undergraduate, but I hadn't. And so I'm in this writing workshop, and they're like, "Okay, write something, and then you have to share it with the class." And I was like, "All right." And I wrote about that. I wrote about being stuck in the truck together for 27 hours on some mission where we didn't get any information, you know, and our lieutenant was like the least capable human being in the world. He got himself hung up on his web gear, I think, off of somebody's like rear view mirror, and having nowhere to shit, you know, and all these things. And like, I was accused. This is where I kind of touched on this during my little intro, where there seems to be this kind of cultural split between like all the people who study creative self-expression are kind of like also raging leftists, and then all the people who like are in the blue collar sector and kind of holding it down with team reality are like not engaged in creative self-expression. Right. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And it took me a while to kind of like even conceptualize that or like understand what was happening, because the whole time I was in grad school, I was like, I feel like I'm really different, but I don't understand why, you know? And, but I wrote this essay, this creative nonfiction essay about this. And it was kind of comical, but it was also serious. I was like, this is like some serious problems we had, you know? And, I was just like eviscerated when they workshopped it. I was just like eviscerated by the class. They were like, this scatological humor is really tactless.
Oh my God.
And I was like, I'm sorry. That shit happened.
Because it's non-believable for most people if you really have to just go through it and live through it. There really was, that whole trip was hilarious, and it was funny.
The whole trip was just like absurd
because I remember going through when I sold my house. When I sold my house and I was putting stuff in storage, I was going through pictures, and there's a picture, and I'll have to send it to you, but there's a picture of the two of us near the truck, and I think you're like taking a knee or squatting down or something, and or one of us is kind of standing. I forget what it was, but we both of us struck a pose, and it was just every time I look at that, I can't help but to laugh. Or like, oh my God, that trip was freaking just hilarious.
You gotta find it and like throw it up here in the.
I'll have to look for it because it's one of those things where it's just like, yeah, classic. All right, listen, Hannah, I want to dive into you. As long as I've known you, you've been doing music. You've been writing. You've been performing. I remember times going up to see you when you were performing in Flagstaff. I want you to talk a little bit more about. Well, actually, my first question to you is: do you remember the first song you ever written or wrote? Wrote, whatever. First song?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I think the attrition has been pretty high on my songwriting because I've written so many.
Yeah, that was the next one.
Yeah, I've engaged really heavily and then disengaged at times, usually because of work stuff, or there's been a lot of times where I was like frustrated with the whole process, and I was like, maybe this is just too frustrating, and I've tried to abandon it, and then I come back to it. And I tell you what, there's a lot of lost songs out there, and there's a lot of lost recordings. Every now and then I'll move and I'll come across some old tape or CD, and it's me, my little mouthy voice, like playing at some open mic or something, like literally decades ago. And I'm like, usually my reaction is like, oh, that's not nearly as bad as I thought it was. But just as an example, I did a little experiment with myself this past March where I decided to try to write a song every day. And I did, so my songwriting output, basically currently my finances cannot keep up with the production costs of my songwriting output. Like my producer has, 50, like a backlog of like 50 songs that we need to track. Yeah. Like I'm not exaggerating. If I could just do that, I would, like I love it. I never run out of juice. I never run out of juice because you know what? Life never stops happening to you. Right. Like it never stops being interesting.
So Hannah, that's a good transition here. You're talking about your songs. I know you have a lot of songs that are out right now. For the listeners that are listening to this right now, where can they go hear your songs?
Okay, so I've been putting out a single every 2 weeks for months now, in kind of a concentrated effort to, just get stuff out there in a consistent manner. I'd like to keep doing this for years, the rest of my life, whatever. And in my opinion, I know this seems a little off topic, but I just want to say it. In my opinion, we've exited the age in which it's important to put out an album at a time. Mm-hmm. People don't listen to music that way anymore. Right. Like when's the last time you bought an entire album versus like, oh, I just want this song or two,
right.
by this artist. And so I've kind of abandoned that idea for myself completely because I just don't see that it serves me. And you can get in people's sort of like attention real estate a little bit more often if you just have like consistent releases, you know? And then, also for right now, I've abandoned the idea of physical, CDs or records, you know. Down the road, I could see if things go the way that I want them to go, there being some kind of like collector's item that, you know, is really neat, that's put together, that's kind of greatest or something like that, that's physical.
Yeah.
Right now, my music is on all of the streaming platforms. So it doesn't matter if somebody uses Spotify or YouTube or Tidal or iTunes, like literally anything that streams music is going to have it on there. And even the apps like social media apps like Instagram and Snapchat, where you can actually, if you're going to, or TikTok, like if you're going to make a little video, you know, you can like search the song catalog and like add music to your video.
Yeah.
So my songs are in there too.
Oh, wow. Right on.
Yeah. So people could add my music to their little TikTok or their little video or their reel, you know, if they wanted to.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So
I've just gone like wholehearted digital, like for this point in time, because I don't see a reason not to.
Talk to us about the songwriting process for you. Like how does it get started? How does it, what happens? What prompts you to, hey, you know what, that's I'm gonna write a song about this. You sit down with a piece of paper and you just start writing, or what? Walk us through that process, because that seems like that's something, especially if you were doing it every day.
Yeah,
it's quite a process, I would think.
So I've kind of dialed this in for myself over time. It used to be a lot more like some weird form of childbirth that was like really traumatic, and you didn't know how long it was going to take, and it was a result of like kind of having some emotions that I didn't really know what to do with, and you know, finally having an outlet. And I think I used to use songwriting to cope with life, because it's hard to cope with life.
Right.
And I really strongly feel that for all of us, you know, our sort of emotion that's above and beyond the sort of container that our life gives us to deal with that, it's either going to turn creative or it's going to turn destructive on some level. So I think it's important for all of us, whether that looks like a creative outlet or not. You know, I think it could be like getting really, really good at blindfolded disassembly and assembly of an M60. Like it could look like anything, you know, but to have some kind of creative outlet so that it doesn't turn destructive on you.
Right.
So I think I've used it that way, but yeah, more recently, I've just kind of fallen in love with the songwriting process itself and been like, you know, this is its own whole skill that I'd like to get better at. And I'd like to play with different aspects of it. For instance, just in the last half year, I wrote my first ever duet, which I've been wanting to do for a while. And then I wrote like 2 or 3 more because I was just like, holy crap, that was fun. But anyway, so for me, the way that it pretty much works right now is some kind of hook connected to some kind of like really tangible, like emotional flavor within myself. Because you got to start with the hook, and it's got to be catchy, not trite, not cliche, but like relatable. So there's a song I'm working on right now called Sugar in the Rain, you know, so that's kind of an idiom. Like sugar in the rain is a visual of like something just dissolving sort of out of your control.
Yeah.
But so when I say hook, I mean, like, you're not necessarily going to come up with a whole chorus in your mind right away, but just like that hook is going to be this sort of thesis or like the centralizing. It's really helpful. It's a very visual idea. And then once you have that, and that it's interesting because the internal work of it is that sort of has to connect to a strong core of emotion within yourself that may be something recently that's come up for you, or it may be something that's like nostalgia, you know, it could be anything, but something that has a really identifiable flavor.
Right.
And when I say flavor, I almost mean like I think this is something that anybody could relate to. Like, remember Christmas morning when you were a kid and you didn't have to shovel the driveway and nothing was your problem. You didn't have to pay the rent. You just had to wake up and smell the smell of cookies and like find out what was under the tree or something like that, you know? So that's like an emotional flavor that you can key in on, and you could create around that. You could create a song, you could create an essay, you could create a poem, you know? So those two things connected together, now you've got some traction and you can create a chorus. And the chorus needs to be catchy. You know, it needs to be something that sticks in people's heads. And for me, I think really, really, really authentic. Like the process of songwriting is almost more like discarding ideas until you come up with wording that feels like so right that it's like it writes itself, like it's just organic. And a lot of times when I kind of dial that in, it makes me spontaneously cry. And it's not even necessarily sad crying. It's just like, you know that you got it when you have that emotional response. But there's a lot of discarding of ideas to get there. And then once you've got the chorus, then, and this is kind of in the genres that I write in, you know, this is not rap and this is not jazz, for instance. Then you can create some verses, and just every single thing in those verses has to drive towards that central idea of the hook and the chorus. Everything has to like support that and substantiate that. And I've written songs on paper. I've written songs on my computer. I like my computer more because my handwriting is so bad. It's like I get in a rush and I'm like frustrated with how long it takes me to form letters. And so I don't even do it right. So the screen is good. And I've written songs with my guitar with me. Yeah. And I've written songs without a musical instrument, you know, at least for the first part with me. And I found that I do a lot better if I don't involve the guitar until further down the road, because the melody will just kind of organically come up and I'll start to like hear it. Yeah. And just allow it, you know, and it's even good to sometimes get some writing done and then go for a walk or go like cook some
words first, then melody.
Kind of like staggering, like it'll sort of like this will come and then this will come and then this will come, you know. Yeah. Like they help each other
and then along. You just piece it together,
and then you piece it together, and then you just kind of let it run through your head and let it let yourself fall in love with it, you know, to where it just is running through your mind all the time. And then it really does get to a point where it starts to write itself. It really, I'm not exaggerating. It really, truly does. And it starts to take on its own nature and its own significance. And then I like to take it to the guitar, because at that point, it doesn't matter if it ends up, you know, then I set it to chords, and it might end up being like, wow, those chords are a little more complicated than what I was expecting. Or it might just be like 3 chords in the truth. But if I take it to the guitar too early, sometimes I'll psych myself out and I'll be like, oh, it sounded so cool in my head, but it turns out it's just G, C, and D or something. And I'll like second guess it. So yeah, I don't like to involve the guitar too soon.
Everything that you're explaining right now. Sorry.
I want this to stop. Okay. We're good. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Everything that you're explaining right now sounds like a very, very long process. So I want to clarify something. And again, those of you that are listening to the show right now, means you're already on the internet. Open up another browser, go to Spotify, iTunes, your favorite streaming platform, what have you, and look up Hannah Pralle. Follow her and listen to her voice. You'll be glad that you did. Hannah, when you're talking about the writing process of this, I'm like, oh, I'll sit down and write this, and then I'll take it to the guitar, and then this is. I'm thinking like, oh my God, I get overwhelmed thinking about trying to, because I'm a very visual person, so I'm trying to picture that process going through it, and I don't have a musical bone in my body. Like you attempted to teach me how to play the guitar at NTC, and I got all of you. Oh yeah, you sure did. And it was all of you tried teaching me how to play Poison's every rose has its thorn. And I'll never forget that, because it was like the look on your face was just like, oh, yeah. And on the inside, she's thinking, just give me the goddamn guitar back, because it was like, I was horrible. It was horrible. But it was so cool.
Underrated how hard it is to play guitar and sing at the same time. It's like, it's really surprisingly hard.
Yeah. And I was just like, yeah, this is not for me. I got sausage fingers. This just doesn't work, But it was, I'm trying to picture you writing it and then taking it to a guitar, and you're like, yeah, I was writing, a song a day, and it's like, holy crap, that's talent right there. That's amazing, because I
don't
love
know.
to do.
I don't know if it's quality, but it's definitely quantity. I'll tell you that. I think some of the best songs that I've ever written came out of that month, and there's something so amazing about forcing yourself into like a deadline kind of mode, where you just don't have time to be, because your ego is your own worst enemy. It's like every single time I've sat down to write a song, my mind has told me that that's the stupidest song I've ever written. Every single one. I guess that's just what it says to us.
You're really hard on yourself.
I think everybody is. I mean, I think that inner critic is like really strong with all of us. And what I found was the workaround is not to argue with it, but to just be like, okay, then I guess I'm about to write the stupidest song I've ever written. Here we go, and to just go with it. Nice. And then it's so amazing what can come out of it if you don't waste all your energy like fighting that inner critic.
Right.
If you just say, okay, gonna do it anyway.
I like that. Yeah. I want to go back to something. You mentioned something about the polarization of music, and then with the family or in today's society and whatnot. What do you mean by that?
So I think that there's kind of a culture war that's been a quiet war.
Yes.
That's been going on for a while, a lot longer before I really had it on my radar. That has been being won uncontested by the left. And I don't identify myself as right necessarily or conservative necessarily. Like I think that if I had to put a word on it, I'd probably say libertarian, because I've always been like, can we all just fucking do what we want to do that's like legal and okay, and constitutionally legal. But according to the, definition these days, I guess I'm like in the alt-right or something. You know what I mean? I'm a lifelong vegan. I always considered myself to be like more on the left. And I hadn't voted a whole lot in my life, to be honest, but I had tended to vote Democrat, but usually I just didn't vote. I think because I was vegetarian and vegan and had put, I really wanted to try to live a life like not contributing to violence against animals, which I still feel that I'll always feel that way. That kind of almost by default put me in one camp. And so then I kept being confused to find that and also like my desire towards creative expression and creative outlets,
Right.
And so it's like you go on that side, you can throw a stick and you'll hit a ton of vegans and vegetarians and people who are involved in creative output in their lives. But they also think that the biggest threat facing us is climate change, and that we need communism and socialism to fix all the problems. We need to give the government more money so it can work better, and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Right. Right.
And so I had a real, I think a lot of us probably did, I had to have a real come to Jesus with myself over the last couple of years, as it's just like everything got so political and so polarized. And I was not at any point confused about where I felt like I naturally was on any of those spectrums.
Right.
It just put me in a place that in fact, can I just give a call back to a memory I have of you? In fact, that has some context that I don't even think you're aware of. I don't know if you remember seeing me. This is years ago, probably in the early 2000s. You were just walking along downtown. You were near Beaver Street Brewery, and I was sitting outside Macy's drinking some coffee at those picnic tables they used to have across the street.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you you were in your uniform. I think that you had been doing, some work at the armory or something like that. Okay, so
this is like, I have no idea what she's about to say, folks. Like...
I always meant to follow up with you on this, and I never did. Okay. So Macy's is a vegetarian coffee shop with really good coffee in Flagstaff, and I've been a very dedicated patron over the years. It's also like Ragamuffin Central, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm down to talk with all kinds of people, but so I was there and I was in my civvies, and so I don't know how I look to people, but I just look like this, whatever. And so I was sitting there, and this girl and guy, and they were like peak Ragamuffin, we're drinking like at that time $5 coffees. I mean, these are pretty freaking expensive coffees, right? And the girl was telling me like really urgently, like she got like really animated about this, that it's just greedy and unfair for anyone to have a house and a car. You should have to pick. You either get a house or a car, but it's the peak of runaway capitalism for anyone to have both. She's telling me this. And I was like, well, okay, but I feel like for people who have kids and that's really tough to do with like young kids. Like you need a house and a car. And I didn't even have young kids, but I was just thinking on behalf of like nuclear families and stuff. I was like, I just feel like that's maybe specific to your lifestyle, but I don't really think that's going to work for a lot of people. People kind of holding down the entire infrastructure of the United States type of people. Right. And she was like, she kind of never thought of that. She came back with something. Then she turned it to like birth control and abortion. Anyway, I was just kind of getting like a laundry list of issues, and I didn't like sign up for this conversation. It just kind of was. But I don't respond to people in ways either where they're going to be able to like easily pigeonhole me politically. Like I really try to see where they're coming from.
Right.
And so it was just kind of going like that. Right.
Okay.
And I think I'd gotten to a point where, and I'm also always interested in sort of establishing rapport, because like, why not? We usually have more in common with anyone.
Never know who you're going to meet.
You never know.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of got to the point where she wanted to be really mad at me for disagreeing with her, but then she realized she liked me and it was going fine. And then you came walking along in your uniform, like 6 foot, whatever you are, like shaved head, high and tight, boots polished, like looking good. And you're like, "What's up, Pralle?" And I was like, "What's up, Bird?" And I think that we hugged, and chatted for a little bit, and then you went on your way. And this ragamuffin girl was just like so offended at your existence and that I even like knew you, and you're a friend of mine.
I have that effect on women, apparently. Just and boots polished. Like, folks, when's the last time you saw a guy in uniform with boots polished? Like, we're aging ourselves here, folks. But like that.
Remember we used to do that? We used to actually polish our boots. Yeah. Anyway, she looked at me like I had like betrayed her or something. Yeah. So anyway, sorry, that was a little off topic, but
I told you guys at the beginning, you may get a few stories about our history and stuff. I vaguely remember that day.
That girl was mad. Yeah. And she was all flustered. Like she didn't know what to do with that,
Oh.
Anyway.
Good times.
But yeah, so anyway, whatever, like we live in clown world right now, right? Like I think we can agree on that. There's just every single day.
The mainstream, we're propaganded by the mainstream media.
We're propaganded.
Yeah. That's a new word. I made it up, and it's my show. I can do whatever the fuck I want. It's
you're propaganded AF, bro.
Yeah, right. And it's like we deal with this stuff every day, and it's getting to the point where it's kind of like, listen, I've those of you that have followed me for years and listened to me for years know that I tell you, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm not the dullest one either. And like to see what's going on in the world right now, you really, if you're denying it, I feel like, and this is my opinion, that you're turning a blind eye to what's really going on. Because like when in the early 2000s, late 90s, we used to, say, oh, North Korea and China, they send all this propaganda stuff. Like North Korea, they'd send these speakers and they did all the psyop stuff, and they're
and they control people's access to information.
Exactly, all of this stuff. You can't tell me that that's not what's happening or what's being attempted to do here in the United States now.
Well, and there's a girl that escaped North Korea, came here, attended Ivy League school, and then wrote a book about how that's exactly what's going on here.
Yeah. Yep. And another good book that I bring up, and I'm sure you guys are sick of me bringing it up, but the 100-Year Marathon, talking about China's control and stuff like that. We're in the middle of that right now, and it just makes sense, and it made more sense once I read it, listened to it. There's an audio book. You guys know I can't read, so I'll listen to stuff. Yeah, I'm one of those special guys, short bus kind of thing. Once I listened to that, it was like eye-opening, and then you start seeing how certain things are taking place. And I'm going off on tangents, so let me bring this back in here, because I'm talking about you, songwriting, and really my next question for you is what's next for Hannah Pralle?
What I hope is next, and I'm making strides in this direction, is getting some traction with sync licensing, which is licensing and publishing relative to the TV and film industry.
Okay.
Because everything that you ever look at, has some music going on.
Right.
Those are all, there's music supervisors that are, creating those projects and deciding what music is going to be where. And so, if any of your audience has any, first of all, likes my music, and then has any connections or interest in music supervising, film, TV placement of music, like that's something that I'd really, really like to just work on until I figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I've been submitting a lot of things. I figured out how to kind of get my stuff at least floated out. I've already received 2 rejections, which I was actually stoked about that.
Yeah.
It's just like publishing. Like if somebody bothers to write you back and reject your stuff and give you some feedback on it, then that's kind of huge,
Oh, absolutely. I look at it like it's a numbers game. Yeah, I'm a sales guy, right? So being a business and a sales guy, it's a numbers game. So I knew, that one of my jobs is I had to make 80 phone calls. Out of those 80, I was going to talk to 5 people. Out of those 5, I was going to sell 2 of them at least. And it's so, but it's kind of like that. Okay, you got your 2 rejections. Great. That just means you're that much closer to that yes.
Yeah. So I've been hitting that hard. I'm going to keep hitting it hard. I'm hopefully going to a networking event relative to that industry, the sync licensing industry, in November. And I just really have to educate myself about it, because I've been creating music the way that I was able to create music. I haven't been tailoring anything towards I have a better shot at placement with this, an electronica kind of sound or, anything like that. So the more I can learn about it, the better. But in the meantime, songwriting is a constant for me. Like I said, I have a huge backlog of stuff with my producer. We have 5 or 6 tracks that he's working on right now, and it's just been really important to me. Once I started this past spring is when I started my every 2 weeks release of a single. And I'm trying to organize my life so that I don't have to interrupt that schedule, hopefully ever again. I'd really, really like to release a single every 2 weeks for, like I said, the rest of my life, because it just makes me, it keeps like water moving through the pipes, like it keeps everything fresh. Like it's really exciting for me.
Hannah, I want to ask this question.
Yeah.
You're very passionate about your music, clearly. And I'm sure the listeners hear that. It's unfair for me to say it because I've known you for a long time, and I know that that's what you're passionate about. Do you find a sense of therapy in that. And the reason why I'm asking that is for listeners that are out there right now, and I was working with an author earlier this year. We did an audiobook. She just went to music school out in California and whatnot. And I'm wondering if there's other listeners out there that want to find their outlet. You know, there's some organizations out there that do music for veterans and stuff like that, but I got a lot of non-veterans that listen to this show as well, and I'm wondering do you find therapy in playing music, but more importantly, do you find therapy in writing it?
I have a couple friends who they tease me. They say that my genre is therapy pop.
Oh, wow. Therapy pop. Okay, that's a new one. I'm gonna write this down. Maybe that could be the title. The therapy pop with.
I'm like, you're probably not wrong. You're probably not wrong. I think it is. I think the answer is yes. And well, just to speak more, first make a bigger point and then make a smaller point. Like you said about your audience, veterans, civilians, everybody's sort of trying to find their way. And like I said, I do think that self-expression, it's either going to go creative or go destructive, depending on what we do with it. I do think that that's important.
Yeah.
I think that the single thing that should drive any individual's decision of sort of like where to go with that is that you have to go towards something that you can be completely honest. I mean, brutally honest in your doing of it.
Yeah.
And that a lot of people are uncomfortable being very, very, very honest in the written word or the spoken word, because we've been chastised for that all of our lives. Like, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm just like some kind of weird anomaly where that's what makes me feel good, and it to the point of even like other people feeling awkward when they listen to my music. They're like, doesn't that make you feel awkward? It's really confessional. And I'm like, no, but for some reason that works for me. But I think that literally no matter what it is, that creative outlet, it has to be something where you stop lying to yourself, because we kind of have to lie to ourselves and each other in little ways all the time, just to like do the stuff that we need to do in the world. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow.
So it's not so much like about an art form or a hobby or an activity or something that you could monetize. It's just like, give yourself some way to be totally honest, and it's going to feel really good. And that could be meditation, I think that that's one reason why it feels so good to hang out with animals, is because we just intrinsically don't have to lie to them.
Right. Yeah.
So I have a lot of thoughts about that.
That's deep.
Yeah.
I like that.
Right?
I like that.
Thank you.
Hannah, what else? We're coming up on time here, and we got a couple more minutes left.
Yes.
I want to know, what is it that you want the listeners to know? What else do you want to tell the listeners about songwriting and about music in general?
Well, I guess just off the top of my head, we live in a time of such abundance. I mean, everybody everywhere has music, makes music, streams music, produces music. Like, we're surrounded digitally by literally every option at any time,
Mm-hmm.
And that would be depressing, as a singer-songwriter, as a musician in a certain sense. But I like it. And I feel like I'm figuring out and organizing my resources so that I can create something honest and sort of emit a clear signal that's sort of like in the ether, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't really necessarily like describe what that is. I think it's just something sort of like vibrational. And it causes, things like this interview, like opportunities and ideas and like co-creations to come along. And then pretty soon you find your tribe, and
I'm glad you said it that way, because my initial thought on that was, being in the digital age that we're in right now. And like you said, so many people are out there like either making music or podcast. I feel the same way about podcasts. Like when I first started, there wasn't a lot of people doing what we do, and I was one of the first in the veteran community to do what we do. And but now I look at it as like, God, there's so many podcasts out there. There's so many this, so many that. How am I going to stand out? And I would think, and maybe I'm wrong. It'd be first time today, but maybe maybe it's one of those things where it's like, as a songwriter, maybe it's a song that you don't sing yourself, but maybe another artist out there hears it, and then they want to collaborate with you and have you write songs for them or do something
all
like
of that.
You know what I mean?
Is so cool, Yeah.
So it's like it's like a whole new, and maybe there's, I don't know, maybe there's probably things that we're not even mentioning right now that are just opportunity. I mean, it just seems like there's so many doors of opportunity, and that could be opportunity to monetize and make money, or it could just be doors of opportunity that you open up one and you're like, this is my purpose. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm where I'm supposed to be right now in life, and I'm going to enjoy this because this is awesome. You know what I mean?
What I have to say about that for both you and me, like what we're both doing, is that because we live in this age of digital abundance where there's everything everywhere all the time, the only way that you can make a dent or get any traction is to be super consistent over time. And the only way you can do that is if you truly love something, because nobody can keep showing up for something that they aren't quite into.
Yeah.
You're going to burn out. And so I think that it kind of solves itself in a way. And it's kind of brutal, but it's also, it's like tough love for us from the universe. Because it's like, well, nothing's going to succeed unless you love it so much that you just can't not do it.
Right. I'll share this with you and the listeners. There's been so many times in the last 7 years. Next month is our 7-year anniversary under the Heroes Media Group brand. Yeah, it's great. I literally just thought about that just now, and I'm like, oh, it kind of stopped my heart for a second. I've tried walking away from this stuff. And then when I try to, I'll either get a phone call, a text message, or an email with somebody asking me how I can help them start their podcast or do their audiobook or do some voiceover work or whatever. And I realize that, first off, I love doing what I do. And when people ask me, what business are you in? I help people get to where they want to go. That's the business I'm in. Because that's my passion, is helping other people. And I just have a platform. I've created a platform to allow people to do that. Hannah, I got one more question here. We're coming up with time. I got to ask this question. It's a question I ask everybody. You're on the show called The Decision Hour. We make decisions every day. Your feet are on the line. And your feet are on the line. You have to make that decision. What is it? And tell us what the atmosphere was like at the time.
I think oh Lord, I'm just gonna really synopsize this. As you know, my significant other died 9 months ago, and we had just gotten finished standing up a business that we both put everything into to get it going, and it's a federal contracting business. And a lot of the sort of ownership paperwork type stuff was sloppy because we were in a rush to sort of meet the fire season deadline, and we were going to figure all that out later. And then, long story short, he died. I ended up negotiating with his family, primarily his dad, in what got kind of crazier and crazier. And ultimately, I ended up having to seek legal counsel, and kind of go up against him. And he's a superior force to me in every way, financially, in every way. And this was a decision that I almost didn't do it, because if anything could make it worse when someone that you love dies, it's to become entangled in a legal battle with their family immediately afterwards.
Right.
It's just like worse on worse. And I wouldn't have even financially been able to do it without the support of my family. I was like, how am I even going to pull this off? I just got done investing everything in this business. And my family's been like, no, that's just straight up wrong. Like, this guy is a bully and he bullies people. And I've watched him do it with his own family. And I watched him do it with me. And I didn't want to be involved in this situation. And I really, really wanted to walk away from it, even at a loss, to just be done. And there's been a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of anxiety. But I just realized I just couldn't respect myself and like live with myself if I didn't at least make the attempt to stand up to really some pretty outrageous bullying. So that felt like a decision point for me that I still don't know what the outcome of that will be, but I'm glad that I made the choice that I made, and I'm going to ride it till the wheels come off. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Hannah, as always, you know, I love you to death, and I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to come talk with our listeners here.
Love
so
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This means a lot to me.
Absolutely. Folks, that's all the time that we have. Make sure you go check out and look up Hannah Pralle, Spotify, iTunes, anywhere that you can listen to music, you'll find her. YouTube, follow her YouTube channel, Hannah Pralle. Check it out. Also, before I let you go, I got to give a shout out to our parent network over at Heroes Media Group. Go to heroesmediagroup.com. Check out all the shows over there. Until next time, I'm Adam. Wow, totally messed up the ending on that one, right? Let's try this again. Hey, that's all the time we got, folks. Until next time, you've been listening to The Decision Hour.